All right, hello and welcome to Engineering Ethics at NJIT. I'm your instructor, Daniel Estrada. I've been teaching engineering ethics here at NJIT since 2015, both on campus and online. I really love this course. I love the material. I love the conversations that I get to have with NJIT students over the cases we'll be considering, some of the issues that will come up this semester. So I've made a bunch of updates to the course material to keep it up to date, to keep it fresh and interesting, both for myself and my students. So I hope you enjoy the material as much as I do. I hope you get something out of this semester. Good luck. So this is the welcome video for the course. I'm recording this in the fall of 2021. The purpose of the welcome video is to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Dan. And to say some things about the course goals and sort of my vision for the course this semester. Be sure to check out the syllabus policies video, which is also on Canvas, for a more detailed discussion of the assignment structure, the grading rubrics, the late policies, the citation policies. All that stuff is in the syllabus policies video on Canvas. And of course, all this information is also spelled out in complete detail in the full course syllabus, which is on Canvas. It's a long document, but it has all the details about my course policies. So any questions that you have will be answered there. But in this video, I want to step away from the course mechanics a little bit and talk more big picture issues about how I'm thinking about this class, what the goals and motivation for the class is. And I want to start by thinking about the very idea of an ethics course. Okay, so I've been teaching this course long enough to know that more than a few students enter into the course with a healthy dose of skepticism, not really understanding the value or what they're going to get out of this course, thinking at the very least it'll be an easy A. After all, it's just ethics, right? The difference between right and wrong. This is the sort of stuff that they teach preschool children when they're 4 or 5 years old. If this is the kind of thing that is taught to children, how hard could the college level course really be? I also think that most of us think that we're generally good people, not perfect angels, but that we, on the whole, do more good things than bad things. And more importantly, that we're not in a position to have some college lecturer wag their finger at us and tell us to do the right thing. So I think students enter into this course with this kind of skepticism. I think it's good and healthy as far as it goes. And to some extent, it's up to me to motivate the course, the structure of the course, the topics that we'll be talking about, especially because this is a graduation requirement for so many of you, that you're required to take this class. It's not like you picked this class because you like the title. But let's be clear, it's not the goal of this class to tell you the difference between right and wrong. You're all college students. I'm going to be assuming that you're all adults with a mature and well-developed sense of your own values and ethics. I assume that you're capable of understanding the difference between right and wrong, and that you can spot the difference in particular cases, at least in some cases. And more importantly, I assume that you have all been making ethical decisions for your entire lives, that you've been confronted with situations where you had a difficult choice to make, and maybe sometimes you've made the wrong choice and learned from those mistakes. But I understand that that we all have a general concern for ethical action, that we recognize and appreciate that it would be better to do less harm, cause less unnecessary suffering. Again, I understand that we are all human, that we all make mistakes, and that learning from our mistakes is part of how you develop into a mature moral person, into a mature moral agent. So making mistakes is an important part of the learning and development process. I'm not intending to scold you and wag my finger about ethical mistakes you may have made in the past. I do think it's reasonable to expect students in this class, potentially future engineers or whatever professional career path that you're on, where you might be making decisions where human lives really are on the line. And I assume that you going into these professional careers, that you generally want to do good things, that you want to avoid doing bad things, you want to avoid causing unnecessary harm and suffering, and so on. Because look, if you don't already have a developed sense of what's right and what's wrong, there's not a whole lot I can offer you in this course to fill that in. I can't give you a proof that you should care about other people, that you should care about the safety and well-being of others. If you don't see why it's wrong to cause unnecessary harm and suffering, maybe you need to take those preschool classes again. But I mean, like if you're a professional engineer and you're getting a project proposal, two different project proposals, but they're alike in every detail, except one of them requires the slaughtering of thousands of kittens and puppies. Presumably, you already understand that it's preferable to pick the project that doesn't involve the slaughtering of innocent kitties and puppies. If you are thinking of slaughtering kitties and puppies unnecessarily or otherwise causing unnecessary harm to others, I don't think it's the place of an ethics class, especially just in one semester, to talk you out of that position. If you're thinking about causing harm to others, this is not an issue for an ethics instructor. I'm not equipped or trained to manage situations where people are in a crisis. If you need to talk to someone, hit me up. I'm happy to talk. But this is not the place to convince you that life is meaningful and precious and worth protecting, that your life is meaningful, or that you should care about the safety and welfare of others. So I take as a general prerequisite for this class as a general concern for ethical behavior. And I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time in class motivating this basic idea. If you're not already on board with the whole ethics thing, then you might struggle with some of the material in this class. Now, to be clear, I'm quite happy to engage in philosophical debates over the foundations of ethical claims, ethical action. I think there's a lot of interesting foundational questions here, and we will, over the course of the semester, be presenting a few different ethical theories, and you are more than encouraged to engage these theories critically. If you have criticisms of these ethical theories, or if you see problems with these ethical theories, by all means, make your criticisms explicit. Spell out your concerns in the discussion forum. I'll assume when you offer these critiques that you're being respectful, but also that you're engaged in the general project of trying to build better ethical theories. You know, if you don't like these ethical theories and you're explaining why they're bad theories, that it's out of an interest in building better ethical theories and, in general, building a more just and peaceful world. And I'll assume that when you're critiquing these ethical theories, it's not just out of a wanton, nihilistic rejection of the very idea of ethics as such. Okay, oops, sorry. Another expectation students sometimes have coming into this class, especially students who already have work experience, maybe you've worked for a large organization or you interned for Facebook or something like that, or maybe you've held a job for a state or federal government agency. In these situations, it's very typical that you have to sit through some orientation or training session where they will go over various policies, including ethical policies, that might apply to your institution, to your workplace, to your particular job. I am a New Jersey state employee as an NJIT lecturer, and that means every few years I have to go through the mandated New Jersey state employee ethics training session, where it's basically a PowerPoint slide. You got to click through the slide. You can't click through too fast, or else they stop you. And it goes over various policies that apply to the state of New Jersey and may be of particular interest or maybe a particular issue for New Jersey state employees, such as Title IX protections against discrimination or harassment, things like laws against bribery and corruption, so like what gifts can I accept, and mostly how to turn down gifts that might be given to me from organizations, institutions, but also from students and this kind of thing. At the end of the ethics training session, they usually give you a little quiz, a multiple choice quiz, just to make sure that you're paying attention to the slides. If you've taken a ethics training class or one of these orientation modules like this, you know that they're not particularly interesting or engaging or intellectually stimulating. They're not particularly challenging. They don't encourage a lot of critical feedback and engagement. They're basically just telling you the rules. They're not asking for your opinion on those rules. I don't mean to knock these training sessions. I understand how they can be administratively and bureaucratically useful, but people don't enter into them with a lot of high expectations about the educational value. Mostly these training sessions are pretty boring. It's hard to pay attention to them, and especially if you've done them a few times before, they're mostly just refreshers on material that you should already know. If you've been exposed to the Title IX protections at all, then maybe it's useful to remind you of some of the details and nuances of those policies, or specific interpretations that your organization has of those policies. But in general, people aren't looking to get a lot of educational value or critical insight from these training sessions. It's more like it's a legal requirement, more like a chore than a college class. And I know students tend to see this class in the same vein because it's also a requirement. It might seem like a chore to you all. But if you're expecting a bunch of boilerplate policy speak that you have to repeat and echo and feign allegiance to in order to get the required credit, but that you can otherwise mostly tune out and sort of just get through. I want to burst this bubble also. This course is not designed to just mindlessly review the policies that you'll be expected to follow. In fact, it's not the goal of this class to teach you any particular organization or institution's policies or individuals' policies, including my own. It's not the goal of the class to teach you my personal values or ethical perspectives. Of course, I'm human, so some of my biases will show through in all the interactions that we have, the lectures, and the material that I put together. So for that reason, let me state very clearly that your grade in this class will not depend on the extent to which you agree with my ethical views and commitments, whether you share my values, or whether you engage them at all. This is not the class where you are supposed to learn about my values and then copy them. It's also not the class where you're supposed to learn about the particular values and ethical policies at NJIT or in the state of New Jersey or in the United States of America, or of the particular policies that might be applicable to your particular job or employment context. It is true that students at NJIT who are engineering majors and lots of other students have to take this class as a requirement for their major, for their degree. The reason for that is that it's an accreditation requirement for the accreditation programs that actually make NJIT a degree granting institution. If we didn't have an engineering ethics course like this, we wouldn't be accredited and your degree wouldn't count for very much. But because we have this course, and every other engineering program in the country has a course similar to this, so there is some bureaucratic requirement that you go through this kind of course. But apart from that accreditation requirement, none of the material in this course was given to me to teach you. I wasn't given any books or documents that I was required to tell you. No one told me to teach any of the material, lessons plans, or case studies that we're going to be going over. This was all selected by me over the last several years because I like the material, because I think it's interesting and compelling, because I think it'll generate some good discussions in the discussion forums. I pick these cases because I like talking about them, because I think they're important for us to talk about in thinking about engineering ethics. I hope you'll find them useful and interesting, but none of this stuff is given to you because it's a legal requirement or a policy requirement for any institution. Now, hopefully after you graduate, you'll get a good job, and at that job, you will sit through an orientation session, a training session, where they tell you the specific policies and laws that apply to your job, your institution, your workplace. It's not the goal of this course to anticipate any of those policies. For one thing, a lot of students who are not engineers take this course. There's architecture students, biology, biomed majors, IT majors, who are not engineering majors, aren't planning on going into engineering fields, but nevertheless are taking this class because there's some importance for sort of professional ethics in those fields. And even among the engineers, there's a pretty broad diversity in the students who take this class. Chemical engineers and mechanical engineers and electrical engineers and so on, all have slightly different job contexts, slightly different concerns in those contexts. There are also different professional societies that manage these fields, and the different professional societies of engineering also have different codes of ethics. They're all mostly the same, but there are slight variations. We're going to be going over the NSPE Code of Ethics, the National Society of Professional Engineers, partly because it's the most generic and sort of broadly applicable, but all of the professional engineering fields have some similar ethical codes, not because they disagree with each other, but because they're all facing slightly different challenges. And I strongly encourage you, because the student population in these courses are so broad and diverse in your in your career trajectories, I strongly encourage you to tailor the material in this course to your specific interests and to the field that you're going into. There's going to be a lot of reading and writing in this course, but you have a lot of latitude over selecting what to read and what to write about. And I strongly encourage you to select readings and to select writing projects that are most closely associated with your interests and your career in your field, your career trajectory and your field that you think are going to be most applicable to you as you continue your professional development. This course can't really cover everything for everyone. It can't go over all of the different policies that might apply to all of the different students in class. Honestly, I wouldn't even know where to begin. This is probably the right place to explain to you that I am not a professional engineer and I've never worked in a professional engineering context. I have a degree from an engineering school at the University of California, Riverside. I have a computer science degree as an undergraduate, which was in the engineering school at UCR. So I've taken engineering courses. I have some experience also in my graduate program at the University of Illinois, which is also a good engineering school. I took some computer science classes and engineering classes at that school also. But I'm not an engineer. I'm not a professional engineer. I don't have a professional engineering license. And I've never worked in a professional engineering context apart from this class over the last several years. Part of what that means is that some of you will have professional experience relevant to the discussions that we're having that you can bring into the discussions and maybe even inform me a little bit more about how engineering practice actually works. You all might have more experience at job sites where these ethical issues arise. You probably also have more experience addressing some of the technical situations that can arise, that can result from these ethical issues. So, in particular, I know that the chemical engineering students who take this class usually have taken the process safety class before this, which is a requirement for the chemical engineers. And the process safety class overlaps to some extent with the engineering ethics class. We talk about some of the same cases and some of the same sort of ethical, theoretical issues. And all that's great. Please bring your prior experience, courses you've taken before, work experience you have. Also, your cultural background. If you have experiences outside of the country that might be useful or insightful for some of our conversations, it'll be great to hear any background experience, personal experience that you have to help fill in the gaps in my own knowledge. Please don't feel free to correct me if you see that I get something wrong or that I make a mistake. I hope that I learn as much from you all as you learn from me this semester. But again, it's not the goal of this class to either teach you the difference between right and wrong or to teach you any specific laws and policies of particular institutions or government agencies. So if that's not what the course is designed for, then what is the course designed for? To put it simply, the course is designed to give you the opportunity to think about your ethics and values and commitments in a professional context. It's true that we all learned about the difference between right and wrong as school kids, but you've probably not had the chance to really get into deep discussions about your values, about what you think is right and wrong, in dialogue with your colleagues and peers. Maybe late nights in the dorms, you have conversations like this with your friends, but in this kind of professional context, talking with colleagues, and really just trying to figure out where you stand on a bunch of complicated philosophical and ethical issues. Most of us have not taken the time to do that kind of work on our own ethics, on our own values. But for the next 15 weeks, NJIT has set aside this time in your schedule to do just that. This is your primary task, to sit around with your colleagues, with other students in your cohort, and talk about your values, talk about your commitments, talk about the lines that you refuse to cross, for instance. Maybe you haven't thought about which lines you refuse to cross, and this is your chance to do it. This 15 weeks is set aside by, not just because you chose this class, but it's part of the degree requirement, so NJIT wants you to set aside at least 15 weeks to think about these ethics. And it's also a requirement from the accreditation programs, so for us to be a good engineering school, we need to have our students go through this 15 weeks of ethical reflection. Now, in your other classes, say your math and science classes, you have homework sets, problem sets, where you have to sort of apply what you've learned in your studies and sort of practice and drill those techniques until you get them down. So I kind of want you to think about the engineering ethics class in the same way. There's not going to be any problem sets that you have to complete. There's not going to be any quizzes where you have to memorize names or dates or ethical theories. There's no vocabulary quizzes or anything like that. But you will have regular assignments, and I strongly encourage you to put aside time, not just to complete the assignments, but to really just think about the issues that we're raising, about the material that we're covering, to do your own research, but also just to have some reflective time where you sit and think about what you actually think about these things. One really good way of doing this is by talking with your friends and family, by talking with people outside of this class, with if they know these cases, if they know the details of these cases, maybe explain some of the details of the cases, and then see what they think. Work them through some of the ethical dilemmas, ethical challenges that you are thinking about and writing about in this class. I'm talking about this stuff with your friends and family outside of class. You can think about that as homework. You can think about that as the sort of practice that you need in order to get good at ethics. So spend that time. Spend the time this semester that you've put aside for the work in this course to really think about your values, think about what really matters to you, where your commitments lie, what lines you refuse to cross. For some of you, this will be the only time in your whole professional career where you spend a deliberate, dedicated effort to thinking about ethics. 15 weeks might seem like a long time to think about ethics and philosophy if you've never done it before. But if you're thinking about this in the context of a 30-plus year career, 15 weeks is a drop in the bucket. One of the things I'm thinking of is, eventually you will have a job and a bunch of responsibilities, and you'll have clients and bosses breathing down your neck about deadlines and whatever. And in those situations, there's going to be a lot of stress. Maybe human lives are actually on the line, and your decisions might impact lots of people. In those situations, in those sort of high-stress situations, you might not have a lot of time to think, to step back and just sort of ponder about what you think about ethics. You might not have the time or mental space to really figure out what you think about the whole ethics thing. So the big goal of the class is to give you that opportunity now, is to give you the time now when there's not a whole lot on the line. You have a grade at the end of the semester, but no one's going to die from the positions that you take in this class. No one's going to lose their job or their livelihood, or otherwise be put in any kind of risk or harm from trying out different ethical positions, getting into respectful debates with your colleagues in class and so on. And because there's nothing on the line right now, this makes it a safe space to have these discussions about where your values lie. Maybe you take a position in the discussion forum in this class that you're not really sure about, but you want to test it out. And after writing it out and then seeing feedback from your colleagues, that you decide maybe that's not the position for you, and you change your mind. That's perfectly fine. That's growth. That's learning. As a person, this is the sort of thing that I'd be hoping for. But the point is that you can take those conceptual risks, those conceptual leaps, in this situation where nothing is on the line. Later on, in more high-stress situations, you will be better prepared to address these sort of questions if you've worked out, to some extent, what you think about ethics and your values now. I'm going to say this one more time on the big picture, because it'll have more emotional touch. Philosophy is a privilege. I know that I'm incredibly lucky to be a professional philosopher, to have a job as a philosopher where they actually pay me, where the state of New Jersey pays me a check every 2 weeks, where my job is to sit around and think about the things that interest me, to sit around and think about my values, to talk about my values in dialogue with all the students at NJIT. It's something that I like to do anyway, and I get paid for it, and it's sort of awesome. And I understand how lucky I am to have a job at all as a philosopher, but to do this job and sit around and do things that I think are important, that matter to me. I know a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do this at all. My parents both worked all their lives. Their parents, also my grandparents, were also blue-collar workers for their entire lives. My parents and grandparents don't have college degrees, and they didn't have a lot of time to sit around and think about their ethics and values to do this sort of abstract, esoteric, philosophical exercise. Because it's hard to do that when you have a job and a family to feed and a bunch of other responsibilities to take care of. And I know also that some students in this class right now have this same kind of responsibilities and burdens. That you're taking care of a family, that maybe you're working a job alongside this course. And I understand how difficult that can be and how important it is in that situation to have time set aside where you can work quietly, where you can reflect on your work without all of those pressures, or at least be able to put those pressures aside to be able to do your work. So having this time put aside to do this work at the administrative level, that NJIT has put this time aside for us, I think it's incredibly important. I think it's a privilege, and I think it's an opportunity that we shouldn't waste. Because I think this work is important. I know it's easy to dismiss philosophy and ethics as a joke, as bullshit, as a waste of time. And I'll admit that it's possible to get by in this class doing a minimum amount of effort. Because, in all honesty, the assignments aren't that hard. And you might think that if you're getting through the assignments and getting a decent grade without putting in that much effort, that you're sort of getting one over on the instructor. But from my perspective, the grades don't matter to me as much. They're really just to help keep track of our progress through the material. I know that some students who are good, hardworking, earnest students, but have failed this class for all sorts of different reasons, maybe no fault of their own. That happens sometimes. It also, I'm sure, has happened that people who are ethical monsters, who will go on to do really terrible things, have nevertheless gotten a good grade in my class. I don't think the grades are sorting between the good people and the bad people, so that's not the point of the grade here. But if you appreciate that time is precious, that our time together is precious, then I hope you use this time to genuinely engage in the material and really try to learn something, both from the readings but also from your peers. And I think if you're genuinely engaged with the material, if you're sort of open to the exploring of your value systems, of these value systems that the course is trying to engineer, then I think you'll find the assignments will be just as easy as if you didn't put in the effort, but that you'll get a lot more out of the course. Maybe you'll come away with a stronger sense of your own values. So, okay, so last thing here. I'm recording this for the fall of 2021, and we're going into 2.5 years now of COVID crisis. We're going to be on campus at the start of the fall. Who knows how long that'll last. But it's been a rough pandemic. And over the course of this pandemic, we've seen numerous examples of, just staggering examples of institutional failures, of governmental failures, of lack of trust and honesty among people. And these sorts of issues resulting in hundreds of thousands of American deaths and even more worldwide. In this context, believe me, I understand that it can be hard to take the demands of ethics seriously, that it can be hard to take the material in this course seriously. After all, if some of the most powerful and influential people on the planet are also clearly engaged in such callous disregard and maliciousness about ethics, then why should any of us care? If you can make it to the top and still be an ethical monster, then what incentive do any of us have to actually do the right thing? When so many professionals treat ethics as optional, why should we care? These are hard questions, and I sympathize with these questions, and sometimes it's hard for me to answer these questions. Especially because I've done research here, and the empirical studies on ethics classes and engineering ethics classes suggest that they don't have that big of an impact on ethical behavior, that students who take ethics classes are in general no more ethical than students who don't take those classes. There's all these clever psychology experiments where they set up a situation where, like, you can take a pamphlet from the thing, but it's supposed to cost $1, but you're just supposed to put the $1 in a jar, and no one's watching you. And so the question is, how many people take the pamphlet without putting the $1 in the jar? And it turns out that it doesn't matter whether you're in an ethics class or not. It doesn't matter how much training you have in ethics. People who have taken ethics classes are just as likely to not pay the $1 as people who have never taken an ethics class. In other words, it doesn't look like these ethics classes are making people more ethical. And we've had these engineering ethics classes as a requirement for engineering majors since the 1980s. So 30 plus years, generations of engineers have gone through the system where they've been required to take these ethics classes. And clearly it's not helped create a world free of corruption. The overall value of these courses, like, there is some reasons to be skeptical. And even if every one of my students makes a solemn pledge to never commit an unethical act for the rest of their professional careers, and of course this is an impossible promise to keep, it still wouldn't change the systemic conditions that result in corruption, abuse, greed being so prevalent and so often rewarded where honesty and integrity are punished. I don't think you all promising to be good people will change those systemic conditions directly. I don't think wagging my finger at you, telling you to do the right thing, will change these systemic conditions either. I certainly don't want to give the impression that I am a paragon of moral virtue, and that you should be looking to me for moral guidance because I'm a thoroughly good person. I'm also human. I have also made mistakes, moral mistakes, significant moral mistakes, and will continue to make moral mistakes. Hopefully, I will learn from my mistakes and try to not make those mistakes in the future. But I don't think me being a super good person or training you all to be good people in my style will change the world to be a better place automatically. My real hope for this semester is that by going through this course, you will have a better sense of your own values, that you will be in a better position to articulate your values in a professional context, and that should ethical challenges arise, that you will be on more confident footing in facing those challenges and understanding your capacities for ethical action in those challenges. And the truth is that that's the sort of stuff that I really can't teach you. Like, I can set up a context where hopefully you learn it, but you can lead a horse to water and doesn't mean they'll drink. These are lessons really that you have to learn for yourself through your own exploration of the material, through your own study and practice, through the time and effort that you put into this course. So please respect the privilege that you have taking this course. Respect this opportunity, and also respect all of the people who did work to make this opportunity possible, the staff and administrators on campus at NJIT, but also your parents and grandparents, my parents and grandparents, all of the people who are working to make it possible for us to take this time to think about our values. I don't expect you to figure everything out in this course. You're not going to solve all of ethics in one semester of this course, but I will be happy if in the end of the semester you just feel a lot more comfortable talking about ethics, about your values, and you feel comfortable talking about it in dialogue with your peers, about how your values intersect with theirs, and how we all share the same world. So, okay, that's all I'm going to say in this video. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to the welcome video. Make sure, if you have other questions, to check out the syllabus video and the syllabus on Canvas for all the other details. Good luck with the course again. Good luck with the semester. Be good to yourself. Take care of each other.